Yesterday, I put out a video covering all of the new executive orders on gun control that Joe Biden signed. Well, that video went off of about as popular as his presidency, and I have a policy where I don't leave unpopular videos up over the weekend on the top of the channel. So today, I wanted to focus in on something from that discussion that I just didn't have time for in that video, and that is that inadvertently, I think that Joe Biden just ended gun buybacks as we know them. And I don't think that anybody in his office actually has the brain cells to realize what they just did. Because he didn't write that, obviously. That and more after we hear a quick word from today's sponsor. Sights are very much a point of personal preference for people, and my personal preference is for the big dot sight from XS. Now, they make a whole bunch of different variations out there, but generally speaking, what you're looking at is a photoluminescent ring that charges up with the ambient light, and then a tritium vial in the center. So regardless of lighting conditions outside, there'll be something for you to pick up. Now, I've been working with XS for a long period of time. I was a client of theirs before they were a client of mine, and I thank them very much for being a supporter of the mission here at the VSO Gun Channel for a long period of time. Go give them some love. All right, so let me set this up for you because we've covered this before. There was a report that came out several months ago that said that companies that were destroying firearms on behalf of law enforcement agencies were following federal law. That's basically what it said. And that requires you to follow certain guidelines to destroy the receiver, the serialized part of the firearm. So the frame or the receiver has to be cut in a certain way, and it has to delete so much metal, and it has to go through so many holes. There's a whole page on the ATS website on how to do this properly, right? And these companies were following the law. But the way that this was happening was these agencies would conduct these gun buybacks, even though you can't buy it back because you never owned it, and it should be illegal. But we're going to not interdict ourselves here. They would get all these weapons and they would take them to these facilities that specialized in destroying these weapons, which means they have to have a federal firearms license and follow the rules and document everything. And, you know, that's the way it goes. And these companies would offer that service to law enforcement agencies free of charge. They would take the weapon in, they would cut up the receiver or the frame, and then they would take the other unregulated components and sell them on the open market. That was their business model. Hey, yeah, you guys are getting all these things in. We'll help you out. We'll cut up the receivers as per federal regulations, document everything, and then we get to keep all the components and do with them what they will. And this was a substantial cost savings to the whole gun buyback program, right? Because they didn't have to actually pay hundreds, if not thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars to have these weapons destroyed because it was a barter system, right? Well, a report came out that freaked out about the fact that they were doing this, right? And it was confirmed that, yeah, this is basically the standard method of operation across the country, all right? There's a couple outfits that do them in each state, and this is how it's done. These agencies show up, they drop the guns off, they do the disposition records and all that sort of stuff. The company cuts up the receivers and the frames and sells the barrels, slides, uppers, not the lowers, stocks, you know, all that sort of stuff. Sells those components on the open market. Yeah. So we covered this. I'm just going to let past Curtis speak. First, ghost guns. So we had to break out the Ghostbusters for it. But now we have to go get like Chris Redfield and Leon Kennedy because now we have zombie guns. I am not kidding you. At this point in time, they have abandoned like all intellectual capacity and they're going for straight clickbait. Yes, that dumb. Well, again, this permeated the media sphere. The corporate media absolutely had a shit over this. So in the executive orders from a couple days ago, this gem came out. Ensuring appropriate disposition of firearms seized by law enforcement. Firearms or firearms parts that were presumed to be destroyed by law enforcement have begun showing up in crimes. Sometimes the guns recovered by law enforcement are sent to a third party that only partially destroys them. By October 30th, the Department of Justice will refresh and clarify best practices for federal law enforcement disposition of seized firearms, including when working in partnership with state and local law enforcement. The Department of Justice will also release a plan to offer new training and education for state and local partners on safe and appropriate firearms disposition. So, translation, what that means is that they're going to revamp the guidelines on how to properly destroy a firearm. One, which is going to affect downstream how those components are destroyed, and it probably encompass some more of them. And it is also going to halt the the redisposition of any of those other components. So by doing this, they have undercut the whole impetus for those companies that were helping those law enforcement agencies out by offering them the service for free. So now what that means is because those companies are going to be unable to resell those components, they're going to have to charge those law enforcement agencies to do it. Well, I just so happen to have checked out the most recent one out of Columbus that we just had happen that over a couple weeks ago. I covered that whole debacle because it was the dumbest one we've ever seen. There's a full video on that. They recovered 234 firearms. So if a business that can no longer sell the components now has to charge the law enforcement agency for the destruction service, let's just be, okay, I'll say it like this. If somebody shows up here and says, hey, I want you to destroy my rifle, I'm going to say, cool story, that's $1,000, right? Full stop. If a law enforcement agency shows up and says, hey, we want you to destroy a whole bunch of guns, I'll be like, sure, no problem, bro. That's $5,000 a pop, right? A special rate for law enforcement. This is the federal government. I haven't determined what that figure should be yet, but you get my point. So let's just say, for instance, that a business actually wants to perform this service and wants to engage in this sort of thing. And they say, all right, hey, we'll do that for $100 a pop. Like that's bare minimum, right? That's less than an NFA transfer. So if I take 234 times 100, that's $23,400 that Columbus PD would have had to show up to such and such business and just fork over. Well, I'll tell you this, maybe Columbus PD has that kind of money because they did just spend $106,000 or something like that on this whole thing. Maybe they got that kind of money, but I'll tell you right now, my local PD, they don't got two nickels to rub together. They sell guns. They participate in like Swappers Day type stuff and hold raffles to meet their bottom line, to be able to pay their officers. They can't afford that sort of stuff. This one over here can't either. And I guarantee you, even my local sheriff's department can't afford $23,400 on a stupid gun buyback. So this executive order has effectively eviscerated the basis by which this sort of thing can happen. And we also covered some weird organization that was like taking those components and like turning them into, gardening tools or something like that, while simultaneously violating federal law and creating unregistered NFA items in the process. That was a really fun video, but it seems to me like they won't be able to do that either because the new guidelines for cutting that stuff up is probably going to be substantially different than what they're currently doing. So I don't think that the gun buyback is long for this world, especially because we have already ad nauseum shown that these types of events do not curb crime. They do not solve crime. They do not prevent crime. They encourage crime because people go out They know that they're going to get a $750 gift card like in the Columbus buyback, and they go around and they smash people's windows, steal them out of their guns and homes, stealing the guns out of the guns, stealing weapons from vehicles and homes so that they can show up and get a $750 gift card with no limit. I'm going to start stocking like the $50 or $100 Saturday night specials, and the next time they have one of these gun buybacks, I'm going to show up with like a $100 pistol and get a $750 gift card. The money's better in my pocket than somebody else's, right? It might as well go to me. I'll put it to good use, right? I'm being facetious, but I could do that since there's no limit. I should do that and then like go buy a belt fed or something like that. Like take a whole box of them. Somebody's probably already done that. Anyway, that's what I got for you guys here today. Ooh, that was a bad one. Have a good weekend. Bye.